Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Cycle. I have Kailey with me today. She is from Kansas City, and I'm excited to chat with her about her story. We have been talking via email for a little bit. So, Kailey, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Um, I'll just jump in and give a little bit about myself
Sure.
then.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit. Thanks for coming on.
Of course. I will start out, my pronouns are she and her, so you can refer to me throughout here. But like I said, my name's Kailey. I'm from Kansas City, so I live in the Midwest where I get all the beautiful weather. I am 30 years old. I focused most of my life on my corporate career, and some of my journey we'll discuss today. You can tell I made some decisions so that way I didn't have to miss out on work. This last year has been really great for me. I've even ended up with a job change kind of because of endo, and I've redefined myself. So I like to say my hobbies are working out and my mental and things like that, rather than I'm this corporate superwoman trying to do it all, which is how I would have described myself 2 years ago.
Okay. Well, thank you for telling us that. And yeah, I mean, I really think you brought up a good point about just, I don't know if your new position will be working from home, but as someone who also, I worked in an office and, having the rough days there compared to the past year of working at home has been really such a positive shift. I mean, obviously COVID has been terrible and a lot of people have been affected and we've lost a lot of people, but the shifting to constantly working from home, at least for me, on those days I don't feel well, has been extremely helpful, pointing out that being at home is really more comforting than being in the office.
Yeah, I am going back to an office, and that's the only thing I'm scared about with my new position.
Yeah.
Um, we'll talk through 2020 a little bit, but it was the worst I've ever experienced flare up wise. And I truly don't know how I would have survived if I wasn't work from home. It was the
Right.
first time I was my entire life, but there
Yeah.
was days I was, laying on the ground because I couldn't sit up in a chair for a meeting. So I hope that my journey is getting to a point where I'm a little bit more functional and that's not as big of a concern, but it's something I'll probably have to figure out going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And, while we're on this topic, before we jump in, I mean, there are some, I think it's Endometriosis UK. I'm pretty sure, they're working with companies and putting out just information about endometriosis and really kind of lobbying of maybe that there's a few days a month that you work from home or,
Mhm.
just teaching these companies to be more empathetic to, how difficult and challenging having endo is. But
Yeah, for sure.
yeah. Okay. Well, I love to start at the beginning and just say, when you were younger, did you have any signs or symptoms of endometriosis or no? And just kind of jumping in the beginning of your timeline with endo.
Yeah. So I started my period, I believe about 13 years old. Ironically, I didn't even know I started my period. I lived in a teeny tiny square mile town at the time. My mom popped into school. She had done the laundry and saw that I had started my cycle, and I shooshed her away. Totally mortified, did not want to have my period. Ran to the bathroom, realized what she said was true, called her back and said, "Come get me out of school." So I do remember that first period, but I was completely shamed of having a period from the get go. And so I never really talked to my friends or talked to anybody else about like what to expect. We didn't really share. I do think I was one of the first girls to get their period,
Mhm.
but it was like a forbidden secret that no one talked through. I'll say my first year, I don't personally remember a lot about my periods being super horrible, but I will say they must have been bad because before I was 14, my mom took me to the doctor and put me on birth control without even really talking to me about it. She just kind of recognized some signs that maybe correlated with her growing up. My mom does not know if she had endo, but she had a full hysterectomy when she was 30. And so the chances of her actually having endo as well, and a lot of our similar issues as I became a woman, really did coincide there. So I don't remember much. It must have been horrible if she took a 14-year old to the OB to get birth control.
Right.
Um,
Maybe
but I
she
kind of got on
saw
that real early.
similar signs and symptoms that she potentially had when she was younger and didn't want you to have those.
Definitely. And I think from what I've talked to her a little bit, especially like looking at my niece who is a young teenager right now, She said she could visibly tell I wasn't healthy when I was on my cycle. I wish I remembered a little bit more of that, or maybe had a little bit more of an active role in it,
Yeah.
because I didn't even know why I was going to the doctor. I didn't know
Sure.
why I was getting on birth control. I didn't have an exam. He just said, this isn't for intercourse. You get a prescription. And then I was told to keep it quiet because my father wouldn't approve. So it was just another thing that we did not talk about.
Right. Right. Because it was taboo.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you get on birth control, and I'm guessing that how did you feel? I mean, did you feel, you don't really remember like having pain,
Yeah.
but did you have any side effects or anything from the birth control? Or did you just take it and you had a lighter cycle and went on with your day?
Yeah. I mean, I believe it probably gave me enough of a pick me up that I didn't miss school. I didn't things like that. I don't think I would have stayed out of school either. I wasn't in a household where you were really allowed to be sick.
Yeah.
So I think it was just like my mindset was you have to go to school, you have to make it through your sports. So just figure it out. I do remember that like I used a lot more tampons or pads than my friends. I had
Yeah.
big old packs in my lockers. I would have huge cramps, especially track season was horrific for me. I hated running.
I also
The
ran
number of
track.
like it's just
What was
I
I
decided I hated
thinking?
track because of it.
Like, what was I thinking? Yeah, especially middle school. I mean, that's already just such a
Yeah.
tough age. Like, I do not miss those years of middle school is just so awkward. But anyway, please continue.
Yeah, no. So I do remember some things like that. I know I had bleed throughs all the time at sleepovers, which was like incredibly embarrassing. I'd always pack extra clothes, just because like my friends could lay down for the night and be good. And if I fell asleep, it does not mean I'm not going to bleed through. And so
Right.
I learned to cope a little bit.
Mhm.
Also, getting on birth control that young made me very curvy young. And so I was very self conscious in general because it was manipulating my hormones.
Yeah.
So there's good and bad with it. I call birth control a birth control band aid. It gave me many years of what I thought was a normal life.
Mhm.
I definitely had more issues than my friends, but I was independent. I went and picked up my own prescriptions. I went and picked up my own supplies. Like
Right.
I ended up living with just my father in high school. So I just took care of stuff and didn't mention it. And I
Yeah.
think that kind of whitewashes my story a little bit where I don't really remember how bad it was.
Sure. Sure. For sure. Okay. So through how long are you on birth control? From 14 until?
Until through college. So
Yeah.
about 8 years.
Mhm.
I got off, honestly, I think I was about 24. I did not get off of birth control until I was at a point in my life where we were not trying for a baby, but we were okay if we had a baby. And
Yeah.
so I was on it continuously. Now, I did always take the week to have my period. My
Mhm.
periods were horrible that week. I thought that was normal to have cramps and feel sick. And I've always felt like I had the flu when I had the period or had my cycle. And they were always 5 to 7 days. Like they were long periods. I never had like
Yeah.
that 1 day period that some of my friends were blessed with, but I
I
thought it was
was
normal.
I know. I was literally talking to someone on the podcast the other day. I was like, yeah, my friends were like, oh, 3 days. It's so annoying. And I was like, 3 days? Like
Yeah.
that's like my dream, you know? So you
Oh no.
still, even though you were on birth control, your cycle was still painful.
Yeah, my cycle has always been bad. And
Yeah.
I guess that's just because the hormones aren't, getting regulated in my system. I didn't know that was uncommon.
Sure.
Again, I think about the only person I had to talk to was my mom. And when I'd call her, she's like, yeah, I went through that too, which
Right.
for
Because
me
so
meant it's normal.
right. And I feel like that's why one of the reasons why it's such a challenge is like for years and years and years, so many people were told it was normal. So generation from generation, I mean, I was told it too, you know,
Yeah.
I know my grandma had it. She also had a hysterectomy at a young age. And I remember her being like, I had this too. You just have to get your hot water bottle. She would even be like,
Yeah.
drink hot milk, which I was like, ugh, disgusting, you know, but that was like an old wives' tale of like drinking hot
Yeah.
milk would calm everything down. And so it's just, again, it was, they were told it was normal. They're telling us it's normal. And
Yeah.
so it just keeps getting passed on to generation. So
Exactly.
after you get off of birth control when you're 24, what happened?
So I think this is kind of human nature, but you focus on the issue in front of you, right? And I I don't think I'd heard of endometriosis by that point. I don't think I really knew much. I knew my mom had some medical issues, and that's pretty much the vast of what she told me. I don't even know if I would have known she had a hysterectomy if I hadn't been old enough that I recognized that there was a surgery. Just
Right.
wasn't really discussed. So I got off of birth control and could not get pregnant. We started officially trying in 2014, and I tried for 3 years without a positive pregnancy test, to the point that, you're ovulation tracking and you're doing all the things. And
Yeah.
I didn't even have a scare.
Right.
I did have a couple chemical pregnancies, but now having know what flare-ups are, what it felt like looking back is I'd have a positive pregnancy test, and then I'd have this huge flare-up, and I would just have past blood clots for about 4 days and be sick and stuck in the bathroom. And so I
Yeah.
was like, there's something wrong,
Right.
but I thought I was just infertile is what I
Right.
was blaming.
Right. Right. Because how would you know otherwise? It's not like endo has this awareness where you would immediately think that that's what it was.
Yeah.
So did you go to your
So,
doctor after these 3 years or within these 3 years and say, like, I think something's going on, we're really trying it,
yeah. So I did eventually go. Here's where my work kind of took over. At the time, I worked for a medical records company, electronic medical records company. And the cool thing about that is you have your doctor's office on the first floor. So my whole life, I would go get pap smears on my lunch and then go back up to my desk. And I was working 60, 70 hours a week. And so when I started having issues, I just went to the doctor that was right there, thinking like, you should know everything.
Yeah.
And they didn't quite escalate me right or quickly. I do know I was sent off site a couple times for like ultrasounds or sonograms, just to make sure I didn't have any cysts or things like that going on.
Mm-hmm.
But really didn't get escalated to an OB even at that point. My company had a really, really amazing IVF option. And so about year 3, I was just like, I'm sick of this. We should go look at the IVF thing.
Yeah.
It was pretty much your first round's completely paid for.
Wow.
And
That's
so,
incredible. That's
yeah,
incredible.
it is one of the coolest things that company does. And so
Yeah.
we started that because they pay for it. It's a lot of insurance and paperwork and all that stuff before you see anyone. And I was halfway through that when we went out longboarding for my birthday. And I just looked at my husband at the time and I was like, I think I'm pregnant. He's like, after all these years? And I was like, yeah, because all I want right now is a steak. And I'd been a vegetarian for 2 years. So I was like, something's not right. My chest is huge. I want a steak. I think I'm pregnant. And I was. After 3 years of trying, doing nothing different, actually finally taking that next step to kind of get IVF, we conceived naturally. I actually caught it the second week I was pregnant. So
Wow.
my body I think because I had been so focused in on how my body was reacting and things like that,
Yeah.
I caught the change in my hormones immediately.
Yeah. Yeah. You were in tune because you knew you could tell.
Yeah. And so I did have to find an OB at that point. It was so terrifying for me to go to a new doctor, just because at this point I thought I was broken. The mental strain that I already had that I wasn't aware of was very, very, very deep. So I go into the doctor's office, I get to go pee in the cup, I get sent back to the doctor's room, and I was full on panic attacking. And I went by myself because I'm that type of person. You handle everything. I don't know
I'm
why.
fine. I got this. I'll just run over to the doctor.
I think I took 2 or 3 home pregnancy tests and I was like, yeah, I still don't believe it.
Right.
So I was sitting there having a panic attack and he walks in, starts talking to me, and I don't know what he said for 5 minutes. And I finally looked at him and I was like, so am I pregnant? He's like, you wouldn't have made it back here if you weren't. I was like, oh, okay.
So I just needed to confirm that.
Yeah, I thought I was getting sent home.
Right.
So yeah, I was pregnant after nothing. And at that point that I became pregnant, I quit caring about anything about my medical life. My only goal was to become a parent. And so I was like, I don't care if my periods are bad. I don't care if it took me 3 years to get pregnant. I'm finally here.
Right.
And I little trigger warning just in case people are sensitive, but I did end up miscarrying after my first trimester.
I'm
So
so sorry.
it's okay. I've coped with it finally. But yeah, so I was pregnant for 3 months, and I honestly have never felt healthier in my life. I know a lot of women who have endometriosis say like while they're pregnant, they feel amazing. I definitely felt that way. I was the quote unquote glowing person. And I told my husband that it's the first time I don't hurt.
Yeah.
It's the first time I don't have back pain, which I didn't realize was my endo.
Right.
It's the first time I don't feel like I have the flu or aches I can't explain.
You were just like, I just feel different, but I feel really good too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess I should back up and say when I got off of birth control to start conceiving, I also really spoke highly of that. I am back on birth control right now, and it's a necessary evil at times, I think, for me, but I hate the way it makes me feel. So
I know.
for me, it was just like a natural progression of like when I got off of birth control, I felt so much healthier.
Yeah.
And then when I got pregnant, I was like, wow, my body doesn't hate me.
Yeah.
So I won't go into much detail about the miscarriage, but I did wake up and there was blood. I am O negative. So we did some shots, we did things like that. And then I came back the next week, and unfortunately, there was no longer a heartbeat. I did choose to miscarry fully at home, which is insane. But I was just so terrified about the fact that I thought I was broken and infertile, and I thought a DNC wasn't worth the risk because it cost scar tissue. And so my whole mental for like the 4 years at this point is you should be a mom. You can't be a mom. That's what's broken. Never once did I slow down and think, hey, you could have a disease or chronic illness.
Sure.
This could be a side effect.
You were just so hard on yourself. You were because
horribly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And none of my physicians even mentioned that like all these different things I had come to and said, you know, I have these incredibly crazy periods, or I can't get pregnant, or blah, blah, blah. I was giving them my history without really realizing the importance of it.
Yeah.
No one even mentioned that there is endometriosis, but a ton of other things that could cause
fiber. I mean, there's a whole list of things. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was mentioning that my mom had had miscarriages, that my mom had hysterectomy at 30, that, you know, there's a chain of things. I really feel doctors were gaslighting me in a way, just trying to get me out the door. And
not listening.
I just wasn't aware. I wasn't aware to ask.
Of course. And sometimes it's just like they just need to listen and hear some of the cues. And I think they're not educated as well, so they just don't put it all together. Not that makes it okay, it doesn't, but I just think from the top down, it's just like the awareness is not there.
And if you think about it, the medical industry's knowledge of endometriosis has grown a lot in the last 10 years.
A lot.
Up until this point, all my OBs were like 50 and up.
Yeah.
So I can't even imagine it was in the textbook.
Yeah. I'm sure. Yeah. I'm sure it was not, but it still doesn't make it okay that those correlations weren't put together.
Yeah. So what that ended up being, because it was my first miscarriage, my OB had told me that I'm not at risk, that there's no, like, you know, until you get 2 miscarriages, you're not at higher risk for pregnancy. I remember just pleading to him, but it took me over 3 years to get pregnant. Yeah. And now I've miscarried. Does that not correlate at all?
Right.
He constantly told me it didn't. I am a very bold person. So the time I went in for the spotting, I had forced him to sit down and tell me all my options for miscarrying, because I knew myself well enough that if I came back in a week and I didn't have a heartbeat, there was no mental capacity at that point to make the choice for my body.
Yeah.
And I was trying to do the same thing in my post-op appointments. Okay, so what's my risk? What's my chances? Sort of thing like that.
Yeah.
This is a little frustrating to me in my journey, and we'll get to it a little bit, but I don't know why I miscarried. And there's no true correlation between endo and miscarrying. So still another thing up in the air. Was it just a fluke, or is there something else that we just don't know of yet? But it was after my miscarriage just the first time that I really started doing research, and I found the endometriosis thing, because now warning, I should have went to the ER. Please go to the ER if you're not me. But
Oh
after
no.
I miscarried, I bled for over 3 weeks straight. And when I say a bled, I like blood clots
Yeah.
constantly. They send you home with these jumbo pads. I was wearing 2 of them at a time
Oh my goodness.
and just suffering. And
Yeah.
that was 100% a mental thing. That was 100% self-hate. I just thought, if I can miscarry, then I deserve this. And I never went to the ER.
Oh
I ended up having to take the medication for miscarriage twice because my uterus was still having so much blood flow when I went back in that they made me take it again. Sat at home, suffered through that.
Yeah.
Never ever called back, never went to the ER. So I did kind of connect weirdly in that time frame though, that my body's escalating. Like it's capable to continue bleeding. There's something else going on, that this isn't normal. Even for like a miscarriage, it's not normal to sit there and just bleed and blood clot.
Right. Your intuition was like, okay, like something's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I started using forums and groups at that time for the very first time, because I've used everything by myself. But I was devastated, and my spouse didn't quite understand because he didn't, carry the child. I was demanding that I take down the nursery by myself. I was very reclusive with it. And so when I couldn't sleep, I was online going, okay, do you guys feel lost? Do you guys have recommendations?
Right.
And it was in one of those chat forums that somebody said endometriosis for the first time. And I was like, what is that word? Like, what is that thing? So it's a really weird, like, chain of events that I even learned what endometriosis was, because no one had verbally told it to me.
Right. Through community.
Yeah. And it was really just a forum of people going, yeah, you did lose something. It's okay to mourn that loss.
Yes, absolutely.
And I was like, do you bleed nonstop afterwards? Like, is this normal? And
right. Just
not
trying to get more
my
information.
OB.
Yeah.
Because I didn't feel safe with him. So that's the first time I heard it. Now, I didn't immediately correlate like I have endo, but it was the first time I got like a little bit knowledge of like there's something else. And so I remember making a list in a notebook: endometriosis, endo, PCOS, like all those certain things. And I was like, at least now I know there's conditions, and maybe I have one of those. Throughout the rest of 2017 and 2018, my body went haywire. I would go back to the OB like every other month for what all my medical records say is like irregular menses or breakthrough bleeding. But I was literally having periods weeks long. For the first time in my life, I missed a period, which I've never done. We went on vacation. We went backpacking in Costa Rica. And I remember having to ask my sister-in-law for tampons because I had bled weeks before it. I thought it was stopping. I packed an entire box. And then in Costa Rica, I was searching for another box of tampons. So I ended up bleeding for over 50 days.
Oh my goodness. I mean,
and
how are you feeling?
Stop.
Like what are your other symptoms? Were you feeling just like anemic and like weak and just like exhausted?
Yeah. So the first time I became anemic was after my miscarriage, and I bled for 3 weeks. I think at one point I counted, I had like 32 bruises on my,
my goodness.
And I was in bed. So to get 32 bruises just from like walking to the bathroom. I transitioned in that period. I don't remember, it was like during my pregnancy or post-pregnancy, but right on the period, I reintroduced chicken to my diet because I could not get enough iron and I was bruising so bad. But I was always worn down. Always having bruises. Every time I have a flare up, I get like flu-like symptoms. So I feel like I have a fever and I want to throw up and stuff. During that time frame, I went to a GI because I had these shooting pains that I couldn't describe. And I got told I had ulcers and got medicine for that, but they were tiny ulcers that they could barely see. It was endo, 100%. I would have random bleeding. So if I didn't have like months long periods, I would literally start my period random. And a lot of times, anytime I was stressed, a cycle came. Which was really hard. I was in a hard job at the time. I was really stressed out with some people I worked with, and I would literally come out of a meeting and go, I'm bleeding. And it's not like, oh, I started my periods. Like, I better
Right.
run to the bathroom.
Yeah.
All of a sudden there's a period here. And
Yeah.
it got to the point that I was like wearing panty liners nonstop just in
Every
case I
day.
started
Yeah.
bleeding. So
Yeah.
it was bad. I started going to OBs. They put me back on birth control because they said, hey, it's because of the miscarriage. Your body is just never regulated. Let's give yourself the same birth control pill you're on for so many years and let's get you regulated. And that worked for a couple months.
Okay.
And then my period started going crazy again. And I went back in and they said, oh, it's because when you take a birth control pill, it actually dissolves a little bit before it gets to your uterus or wherever they were trying to tell me. And you're not getting all the hormones. So let's switch you to the NuvaRing because then your hormones are going directly to the area that you're having issues. So then I did the NuvaRing for a little while. It was
the birth control roller coaster is what I call it.
Yeah, and it was a team of doctors. And so I felt like every time I pushed back, they kind of just like throw a new OB in the room with me.
Right.
And
Or
just tell me
different
that no,
suggestion.
it's okay.
Try this, try that birth control. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. So I rode that roller coaster until early 2020, until I just got so mad. I went into the doctors. I met a new OB at my facility. He did not rub me right from the get-go, which is probably a blessing in disguise, or in disguise there. I guess one thing I haven't mentioned is I hate the OB. Ever since I miscarried, I have really bad PTSD.
Yeah.
I hyperventilate the whole way in. I cry the whole way home. Even if it's a good appointment, they're rare. I still don't do well.
Yeah. Of
This
course.
doctor's office is where I had a miscarriage, and they couldn't seem to remember. And so every single time I'd go to the room,
Yeah.
they'd be like, well, have you been pregnant? Have you miscarried before? And I was like, yeah, with you.
Yeah. Please, and read the chart. Like, please read the chart, like, before you ask me these very difficult questions to answer.
And it would drive me nuts. I mentioned earlier, I worked in electronic medical records at the time. So I knew that there were systems for this. It just drove me nuts. And so I saw a new OB in that clinic in 2020. And he just did not care what I said and kept cutting me off. And I was getting really frustrated in the whole appointment because this is the first time I was advocating for myself. It was the first time I wrote down all my symptoms.
Right.
No reason. Like I think the online forums have taught me really the importance of that. But at that point, I was just like, maybe I'm not doing a good enough job explaining myself. I know I freak out when I get in there because I have PTSD. So like, let's bring a notepad. Let's just make sure I say it right. Maybe it's my fault.
No.
So how I felt, at least at that point.
I know,
now I know much better.
I know. I mean, when you're in it too, like that, and you feel really sick and you just feel defeated. It's just like, why no one's listening to me? I know something's wrong. Like, I know something's wrong. I just need someone to hear me. Like, that's probably like how you were feeling.
And like the physician before him, like at least he kind of listened to me. Now I don't think he cared enough to address the full symptoms, but he was letting me finish my sentence. This gentleman was cutting me off before I could finish a sentence. And he finally looked at me and did like a deep breath, like he was frustrated, and said, well, if you don't have issues the weeks that you're on your NuvaRing, then why are you taking it out to have a period? And I looked at him and I said, well, my goal is not to be on birth control long term.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, that's not right. I'm going to give you another prescription. Never take it out. And I just got mad. And so I sat there trying to process, so I'm telling you, I don't want to be on birth control. And you're telling me instead of taking it out and having a cycle, just put another one in.
Right.
And by the time he finished sending in the prescription, I just looked at him and I was like, you're fired. Like, no good talking. I just looked at him, I was like, you're fired. He's like, what? I was like, no, you're fired. I'm done with this clinic. I'm done with you. You're not listening to me. I'm going to go find medical help somewhere else. You're fired. Like, I'm done with this place. And I got up and put my clothes on and walked out.
Wow.
Just done. And
you hit your breaking point. I mean, it was just like the last straw.
It was just like, I'm verbally telling you no. Right. And you sent in the prescription in front of me.
Right.
I was like, okay. I was like, you need to leave so I can put on my pants because I'm done. Like, I'm done with you. So I left. And I remember calling my sister-in-law who works in the medical community in Denver area. And I was just crying. And I was like, I've always chosen male OB because I'm blunt, because I don't have a ton of emotions. I thought like a guy that could shoot it to me straight.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's my issue. Maybe I need a female OB. Maybe I just need somebody to listen to me. Like now I'm trying to figure out what I could do differently. And her boss is an OB, and the person that she would recommend out of everybody else opened up a clinic in Kansas City.
Crazy small
Right.
world. Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I'm going to her. And they're like, well, I think she's like across the city, which Kansas City is like a small town city. You drive 45 minutes because the city is spread out.
Spread
like,
out.
we still
Yeah.
want to pretend like we're the country.
Yeah.
So she's like, I think it's far away from you. And I was like, I don't care. Like, I don't care as long as they can get me in. And so I started calling to get into there. And I will say, I guess I'll pause after I say this and kind of explain like my symptoms, because that's why 2020 got really bad for me, because it escalated at this point. But the other thing I really got impacted with is COVID. So my body went haywire literally starting in February of 2020.
Yeah.
Even to get into the first appointment where I got told to never go off NuvaRing was a long, I didn't get in there, I think till May, and I had called in February.
Right. Did they close down for a few months? Yeah. Yeah.
They completely closed down. And then in 2020, I think I saw 4 or 6 doctors.
Wow.
In the year alone. And every single time I got waitlisted because of backups, because they had closed down because of COVID or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
I did everything alone every single time because of COVID. It was
you couldn't go with anyone. Yes.
So as much as I hate the timing, I also love the timing because of, like I said earlier, I don't think I could have showed up to the office during this.
Yeah.
It's the first time in my life
feeling sicker.
Yeah. And it got horrible. Like it's the first time in my life. I'm a big gym person, and I've changed over the last year, like how I work out for my body. But up until like 2019, I still was lifting really, really heavy. And like when my body couldn't do it, I would self-hate and go push my body through it.
Yeah.
And so the slowdown helped me in a lot of ways to refocus and realize like I need to give my body grace and things like that.
Those are such good points though. I think a lot of us with endo do that.
It's hard because you're told that it's normal. And so if it's normal, you should be able to do your normal life. And I just couldn't mentally grasp it.
Tell us about the symptoms that you were really starting to experience in 2020.
So 2020, it was horrible. First off, the first time in my life that I ever experienced PMS, and I've now been diagnosed with PMDD. So days before my cycle, I was hysterically crying, and I've never experienced that in my entire life. And I couldn't quite grasp my brain around that. During my cycle, it would, at the minimum, be 5 days long. I would bleed heavy for at least 3 or 5 days. Once in a while, I'd get a light day at the end, but it was usually the entire period. I'd pass blood clots, like the size of $50 constantly.
Yeah.
Cramps and pain was horrible. So back pain was horrible. I'd have cramps. And it was the first time when I started listening to endo podcasts and stuff, I could explain that I felt like there was like an ice dagger stabbing me. Because before, I remember driving home one day on the phone and I was like, it hurts. I don't know if it's what area. I don't know where. It's just stabbing pain.
Yeah. Right. When it's that bad too, you're like, I don't even know where it's coming from. Like, I don't know what part it's coming from, but it's just so
it just
painful.
Hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts.
Yeah.
And I'm like crying. I'm the type of person that doesn't cry. Right. So this pain is like bringing me to tears. Fevers every single time. When I would start bleeding, it was literally like somebody would turn a faucet on and I would fill up a jumbo pad within 15 minutes.
Oh my goodness.
Every single time.
Yeah.
I couldn't wear tampons anymore because it hurt too bad.
Yeah.
It was horrible. I would fall on the ground and not be able to move. Or if we have a built-in tub, the jacuzzi tubs. If I managed to get in the tub, it may take me 25 minutes to crawl out of the tub.
Yeah.
My pain was so bad.
So bad. Yeah.
And I was on NuvaRing at this point. Like I was still on birth control, and it went from happening on my cycles to happening every day of the month.
Yeah.
In some form.
Yeah.
It was horrible. And those flare-ups haven't went away completely from me, even though I've had surgery. I can kind of control it again to have it not be every single day.
Yeah.
But from about at least September until February, it was the majority every single month. And I was just in bed.
Yeah.
Sick.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so sorry. And it's just something. It's just, this disease is relentless sometimes.
It was. I will say, blessings in disguise again. At one point, I got mad and just quit taking birth control. And I do think it made it, I don't know how endo grows. Nobody knows how endo grows for each individual. I do think me just chucking birth control in the middle of this really made it probably grow worse. It went from doing that to then bowel movements hurt, and endo went and developed on my bowels. But I don't regret it because I think it finally got bad enough people paid attention.
Yeah. So you went to go see this new doctor.
So I did.
From your sister-in-law, right? Okay.
So, and that was in, I want to say November.
Okay. Of 2020.
So I was of 2020. So remember, I started going at the beginning of February.
Right.
And I'd held off. Because I was traveling for work.
Yeah.
And so November 2020 comes, I go to this new doctor. I think the wait list was 2 or 3 months before I got in there.
Yeah.
And I'm in all this. It's this bad, right? And I'm explaining everything. And we sat down. She goes, okay, what's your goals? Is your goals to figure out if you have, and the first thing I said when I walked in was like, I think I have endometriosis.
Yeah. At this point, you're like, I know all the signs and symptoms. Yeah.
Like I'm going to self-diagnose. I think I have endometriosis. And so we sat down, and she was really, really good. She did approach me in a way where she said, are you looking to get diagnosed with endometriosis, or are you looking to understand if you're infertile? Because of course with me, they have been the same journey.
Yeah.
And I looked at her, and no one had ever posed that question to me. And I said, I would keep all these symptoms and add them 10 times if you told me I could be a mother. Like I'd do it for the rest of my life. And she's like, okay. So we started an infertility workup is what we did. And she said, if you have endo, your labs are going to start showing it. And I may have to send you away to a reproductive endocrinologist. But let's start the workup. Let's take a swab. Let's do all that. So, I mean, she did the vaginal scrape that day, which I didn't know because my period was so random. My period started a day later. So that vaginal scrape was like painful. Bloody murder pain.
Yeah.
So bad. Because I was like, you got it. Like I've done this before. No, it was horrible. Took labs. My CA 125 came back elevated. And then I think it was my FSH, the other one. I think that was elevated at that time. And that's the blood work you take on the third day of your period. So you go in on your third day of your period, they take labs where they can really see where you're at. And because that CA 125 was elevated, she said, I'm sending you to a reproductive endocrinologist. This indicates more than likely with your history, endo. Yeah. The other is ovarian cancer. Either way, I'm not equipped to take care of you. Right. And so I wasn't with her long. She was amazing. She listened to me for the first time. She talked through endo. She actually did this weird thing where she reassured me that my journey wasn't horrible, in a sense that a lot of women have to go to multiple doctors. A lot of doctors don't know. And she even sat me down and said, a lot of these steps they took with you, I would have taken with you. And I said, okay, that makes me feel a little bit better, because I felt like I had done this damage to myself in a weird way by not focusing on it. Yeah. But it wasn't your fault. Yeah. Self-hate is something I worked on this year. Or self-blame, I guess, better. Yeah. Actually, I think it was my FSH and my estradiol levels that were elevated that sent me. Yeah. And like 4 or 5 times like what is the normal rate. Yeah. And so I got the list of reproductive endocrinologists, and I spent an entire workday Googling them, reading the reviews, trying to find somebody good. I ended up calling my nursing staff for the OB I just was at, and I was like, do you guys recommend any of these people? Like, I really don't want to waste my time. I'm going to get on a wait list.
Yeah.
And they recommended me to a guide that they send people to. And I scheduled that. My appointment wasn't until January of 2021. So I was on another wait list. And I'll say this, and he's my current doctor. He is pretty knowledgeable. He is willing to debate things for me. He believes in as good of endo and infertility. He does not have bedside manner. He is not somebody I enjoy communicating with because he doesn't communicate with me. But he knew what endo was, and he was the best in my area. So I say that as some of my movements forward from there were because I have limited options. Like, for example, I wanted the ablation surgery.
Yeah.
And he doesn't believe in it. And with my infertility issues, he believes that if we'd done an ablation, I would have had more scar tissue, which would have led to infertility being 100% there. And so I kind of got to a point where I had to choose somebody who would finally treat me, or somebody maybe down the road that I could find that would treat me the way I wanted.
Is there a reason why you wanted ablation versus does he do excision?
Kind of.
Or not. So
he's not really. I had a laparoscopy and diagnosis where he did cut it out, but he is written down as a laparoscopy. So
right. But was there a reason why you wanted ablation versus
I think
excision?
For me was more of my research or my listening to the community. My understanding is ablation takes it out of the roots. And it has better long-term
other way around. Excision. That's excision.
Oh, I said that the wrong way. Yeah, you're right. I wanted excision. Sorry. Yeah. Thank you for catching me.
No. That's why I was like, I just want to clarify this for the listening audience. Yeah. Excision. Yeah, no. Excision is the gold standard.
You're 100% totally fine. Excision's taken out. There's not a physician in my area that does excision.
It doesn't. Yeah.
Or can have insurance coverage.
Right.
So if I found somebody even relatively near me, it was all out of pocket. And even with a laparoscopy, you're looking at $5,000 out of pocket from the countless research I did, at least for me.
Yeah.
So I will say this, he knows what endo is. Before my first appointment, and I remember posting about it, I was like, I have a 15-page questionnaire to fill out before my first appointment. And it was all endo questions.
Wow.
Like 100%, like on top of getting all my labs, on top of taking labs when I got there. He had all these questions about, have you bled, how you have pain, what your family history is. It was so, I guess, obvious to him that I had endo that I was sitting in the doctor room and he walked by and knocked on the door. He's like, follow me, and took me to his office.
Right. Was like, just come talk to me.
Yeah. I've actually never had a pelvic exam with him, which was weird because that's like step one everywhere.
Yeah. So was this January 2020 that you?
Yeah.
2021. I don't even
2021.
I don't even know what year
January
it is.
2021.
That you were finally able to get a diagnosis.
Yeah. So I met with him. I did the paperwork. I had to do about a month of a couple times a week labs. For example, my eggs came back in a menopausal field. So we had to do extensive labs there. I had to do an ultrasound, all these sort of things. Some of them are kind of checkpoints to make sure insurance will pay for your surgery. And some of it was because, again, I want to know if I'm completely infertile. And my labs were coming back in some scary numbers. And so we do further testing. And so we went through all of that up until the first week of February, but my surgery was scheduled the 21st of February. And so up until the first week, I was still doing more labs. I was going in. And then I think the week of my surgery, was my last check-in, and I had to go in for a COVID test, obviously, before surgery.
Right.
But it was a constant. And again, I'm driving 40 minutes, so 2 to 3 times a week. I'm
Yeah.
driving there and just
Yeah.
getting more blood work or more ultrasounds or more things just because he couldn't quite put it all together.
Right.
We did the surgery on the 21st, which was COVID. So I got dropped off the door. I walked in by myself. I
Right.
did the entire day by myself.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say I didn't quite hate it. I get stressed out with other people. So it was kind of nice in a weird way to just not have to like talk about what I was there for.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But did the surgery. Finally got my official diagnosis of endometriosis. And then he said he got rid of it. Again, I told you my bedside manner with him is sucks.
Right.
I never saw him the day of my surgery. Never saw him. He did not give me that. He called the people who were picking me up and they asked. And he goes, "Oh, yeah, we got it." Didn't even tell them. Like, when I went in 2 weeks afterwards, post-op, actually, I ended up calling the week after because I got told I was going to have 3 incisions in my stomach and I didn't. So, of course, if you're trying to get an endometriosis diagnosis and you don't have as many cuts as you expect,
Yeah.
you freak
Did you
out.
just have one?
So he just annihilated my belly button, which I'm okay with. There's less scarring. And when I asked, so I talked to his NP more than I talked to him because he doesn't have great bedside manner. I called her in a panic and I said, "I don't have enough cuts." But he said he found endo. So like, did he not get rid of it? And she said he was able to slice my belly button deeper and put both tools in my belly button to laser it off. And so,
Right. And so that was February that you had that surgery.
February.
So how are you
Yep.
feeling now?
I'm good. I had a pretty decent recovery. I did end up going to the ER because I had a blood clot that broke loose and had to deal with that. I think it probably scared my family more than me because I'm used to blood clots. And honestly,
Right.
if I would have known it was a blood clot, I probably wouldn't have gone in, as
Right.
dangerous as that is. It hit a nerve in my stomach.
Oh my
Sorry,
goodness.
when I passed the blood clot, I clenched. I didn't realize I passed one. And I hit a nerve in my stomach, which goes up to behind your ear. And it made me like pass out because I got lightheaded. And so then I got to spend a whole day in there for them looking for like an MRI and looking for any other loose blood clots in my system.
Oh my goodness.
That was about a week and a half post-surgery, but it was just my body. My body does that. So after that, no real issues. I healed pretty nicely because he did such a big incision in my stomach. I ended up having to use straight alcohol to clean it out and get it to dry because it was so moist that like my incision wasn't healing for a long time.
Oh, no.
And they tell you to use hydroperoxide, and then because it was just
no.
all in my stomach, they told me not to. So, and then I've been on birth control since.
Okay.
I do have flare-ups still, mostly on my week of my cycle, quote unquote. I'm on continuous birth control, so I'm not supposed to be having any breakthrough bleeding, but I am. I'm having full cycles. I was supposed to have a period before I started birth control. It never came. And so they had brought me in for labs. They said, "You're nowhere near your period. Go ahead and start birth control." And then 2 weeks after I started, I had a breakthrough bleeding for a week. A month later, I had breakthrough bleeding for a week. And then this month, I switched from the pill to the NuvaRing. I asked if I could, and I haven't had breakthrough bleeding yet, but I may in like a week or so. I don't know.
How are your symptoms
right now? Just trying to heal.
Yeah. How are your symptoms?
The week I had my breakthrough bleeding, I still have a complete flare up.
Yeah.
I will say it's not as bad. Like I feel like I can still kind of survive life, and I'm just taking a ton of ibuprofen, Midol or whatever. But the days I am not through that breakthrough bleeding, I feel normal again. I'm back to even like exercising most days of the week, and the emotional drain is probably the biggest relief. Through 6 months of that, I went through a pandemic. I went through the biggest flare-ups I've ever had. And then I had a lot of personal things going in my life.
Yeah.
So my depression got really, really bad.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want to do it
You've been
anymore.
through a lot. I mean, you've been through an incredible amount, and during a pandemic, is just, it's heavy. It's heavy.
It was a lot. And I just had a job change that didn't like work out super well. I lost some friends in that whole process. And so it was rough for a while. I feel like my hormones made everything a lot worse
Yeah.
because I was feeling things for so many different reasons. That all feels much better. I feel much healthier mentally.
Good.
I feel
Good.
able to still kind of be a part of life.
Mm-hmm.
Supposedly I'm supposed to be better and I'm not supposed to have flare-ups. It's not true. I had a flare-up right after surgery.
Yeah.
I don't think it's all gone. I honestly think there's endo on my bowels still because that's where I feel like the most pain. And I
Sure.
try to communicate that. But there's no pictures of my endo for my bowels. There's only pictures of endo on like my uterus and stuff. So part of me wonders if they even checked fully. I don't know if that's PTSD from gaslighting from all the years or if that's my gut saying, hey, there's still some in you. But it's kind of like kind of waiting game right now. I do have the option of potentially trying to see if I can conceive one more time. It will really be a play up to if I can get a mature egg before endo grows back. And so in the next couple months, I might look at doing that. And then long-term plan is if I can't conceive or have children, then I kind of want to tap out a little bit. So I will be looking towards maybe a hysterectomy or things like that. It's not a cure, but for me, if I'm not going to have children, I'm kind of at the point I'd take some dramatic steps just to feel a little bit better more often, or at the minimum, I'd get on a high dose of birth control, but I hate being on birth control. So I wish there was more of like a long-term, like relieve chronic illness type of situation. That will be kind of my next journey is when it builds back up, what do I decide to do or have I met any goals? So I'm really in that like little waiting period right now, figuring out
I think
how my life's going to change.
It's one step at a time, one day at a time is really my best advice too, just from, living through my own kind of process with this, because it's hard to think ahead because it just gets overwhelming. It makes you anxious, but you do have to think ahead too. I understand. So it's just take those baby steps. If you feel well now, just enjoy these moments of feeling really well and take those steps to get to where you want to be, but take them slow. You don't have to rush, so.
And as much as I feel like, so I think the frustrating thing about me for my endo journey, and I kind of the reason I like to share it is number one, I think infertility has been the biggest push and still is my biggest push in my life. And it makes me approach endo a little bit different because like I said earlier, if you told me I had to go back to those really horrible months, I would do it in a heartbeat. For me, it's not like I'm not looking for symptom relief. And so when I get to the point that that's my only option, I probably will feel a little bit different on taking those choices of what I'm going to do long term, because there's still a tiny part of me that just wants to become pregnant. And a lot of my decisions are scoped in that general area. And then a lot of the reason why I share is because an endo diagnosis or maybe not having the birth control band-aid early in life would have really changed my life. Trying to conceive earlier or doing things like that could have been options for me. And I didn't even know to think about it. So most of my time now is having conversations with my 16-year-old niece or my other family saying, hey, you have some of these triggers. You're sick all the time with your period. You're doing this. Go ask for this blood work. Because knowing things early in life can only help you. Because I'm 30 years old. I finally got a diagnosis. And I feel like if I would have known at 20, I would have done a lot of things different in my life.
Early diagnosis is definitely key. And I feel the same way. If I knew earlier, things may have been very different for me too. Well, I can't thank you enough for sharing your story, and we'll keep in touch. Keep me in the loop as to what's going on. But is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
No, I just had made a note to thank you. Your podcast was one of the first that really helped me when I was stuck in bed and felt alone and didn't think anybody understood. And it led me to all the online resources, but main reason is this podcast before I found anything else that really helped me with other people's stories. So just a big thank you, because it definitely made a difference in my journey.
Thank you so much for saying that. It really means the world to me. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing
Of
to help
course.
other people. Thanks, Kaylee.
Thank you.